Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Happy Monday. Time for another episode of the Monday Talks. I'm just about completely over whatever cold I had. And I was wondering, with the holidays and everything, I was so turned around and I was like, oh my God, Monday is coming up. It's actually Sunday as I record this. I was like, I really, what do I do? And then the universe / the USPS delivered unto me the answer. The December history by mail sneaking in at the last second right underneath the gun. So this is how we will spend the last Monday of 2024 and the last Monday Talks of 2024. We're going to finish off the, what was it called? Transfer of Power or something like that? Transfer of Power series. I cannot remember what we looked at previously. However, we're going to get in. We're going to see what this has to offer. All right, we have the White House, Washington. Some notation up there. The Honorable Strom Thurmond, President Pro Tem, the U.S. Senate, Washington, D.C. Honorable Thomas P. O'Neill, Jr., Speaker of the House. Dear Sirs, pursuant to the Amendment 25, Section 3 of the United States Constitution, I hereby inform you of my present inability to discharge the powers and duties of the President, and to inform you that the powers and duties shall be discharged to the Vice President as acting President until further written declaration to the contrary from me. Sincerely, blank. There's no date. Strom Thurmond was around for approximately 700 years. So let us get in and let's see. What do we got here? Letter to transfer presidential power after the assassination attempt on Ronald Reagan, March 31st, 1981. Okay. On March 30th, 1981, President Ronald Reagan and 3 others were shot by John Hinckley Jr. I remember reading about that. Reagan was wounded as he was leaving a Hilton hotel in Washington, D.C. Hinckley claimed his motivation was to impress actress Jodie Foster, with whom he had developed an obsession. I believe it was after the movie Taxi Driver, if I'm not mistaken. John Hinckley Jr. was later found not guilty by reason of insanity. He was confined to a psychiatric facility until September 10th, 2016, when he was released to live with his mother in Williamsburg, Virginia. Public outcry over Hinckley's verdict led to the Insanity Defense Reform Act of 1984, signed into law by President Reagan himself, making it much more difficult to obtain a verdict of not guilty by using the insanity defense. On Tuesday, March 31st, 1981, the day following the assassination attempt, the enclosed letter was prepared for President Reagan to transfer his presidential power in the event he was rendered incapacitated. This is true. Even if it's like a minor surgery, like when they have to put them under, the acting president would still have to, at that point, transfer their power to the vice president. Where am I here? Reagan was struck by a single bullet that broke a rib, punctured one of his lungs, and caused serious internal bleeding. However, he awoke quickly from surgery. The letter was never signed, and the transfer of presidential power was never occurred. Interesting. That's why it wasn't signed. Although, I think technically they still should have. But what can you do? The 25th Amendment. Article 2, Section 1, Clause 6 of the United States Constitution reads, in case of the removal of the President from office or of his death, resignation, or inability to discharge the powers and duties of the said office, the same shall devolve on the Vice President, hence the chain of command. However, this clause leaves ambiguous the status of the Vice President in such cases. This is also true, because with the normal chain of command, everybody just kind of bumps up a place. Well, at least now. This might be talking about the establishment of it. Does the Vice President become President or merely assume the power and duties of the presidency? Also, what does the phrase inability to discharge duties mean? Who decides what constitutes inability? The 25th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, ratified on February 10, 1967, clarified these issues. 13 days later, at the White House ceremony certifying the ratification, President Lyndon B. Johnson said, "It was 180 years ago, in the closing days of the Constitutional Convention, that the Founding Fathers debated the question of presidential disability. John Dickinson of Delaware asked this question: what is the extent of the term disability, and who is to be the judge of it? No one replied. It is hard to believe that until last week our Constitution provided no clear answer. Wow, that part I did not know. Now at last, the 25th Amendment clarifies the crucial clause that provides for succession to the presidency and for filling a vice presidential vacancy. How, after 180 years since the ratification of the Constitution, did the issues raised in the 25th Amendment gain enough attention to warrant a constitutional amendment? President John F. Kennedy's assassination on November 22, 1963, demonstrated the need to make a clear procedure for succession of presidential powers. Yes. Additionally, medical advances made the scenario of an incapacitated president significantly more realistic. Also true, as time went on, it became a lot more common to be able to have surgeries that would put you under and bring you back. Additionally, I just read that, I'm sorry. Further increased tension during the Cold War era made it especially necessary to clarify succession of presidential powers to avoid confusion or vacancies in office during critical times. In 1963, I'm going to fold that over, I'm sorry, Birch Bay, I'm not actually sure how that name would be pronounced, Bay, a Democratic Indiana senator, became chairman of the subcommittee on constitutional amendments and championed the cause of clarifying succession of presidential powers. I guess Bay also authored the 26th Amendment. Please somebody correct me if I'm wrong. I do not know that name. Which lowered the voting age to 18 and gained support of the Vietnam-era draft of men between the ages of 18 and 21. Of note, Senator Bay is the only non-founding father to have authored 2 amendments to the U.S. Constitution. Okay, note to self. He's going to be coming into some research later. The application. The 25th Amendment has 4 sections. Sections 1 and 2 deal with presidential and vice presidential succession, respectively, while sections 3 and 4 deal with an incapacitated president. In Section 3, a president may voluntarily discharge the powers and duties of the presidency, while in Section 4, other executive officials may force the president to do so. In the aftermath of the assassination attempt on President Ronald Reagan, Sections 3 and 4 were considered for use for the first time. Section 3, here we go. Section 3 of the 25th Amendment reads, whenever the president transmits to the president pro tem, I'm pretty sure that's how it's pronounced. Is it pro temp or pro tempore? I think it's pro temp. I don't know. Dad, let me know. Of the Senate, and the Speaker of the House of Representatives has written declaration that he is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office until he transmits to them a written declaration of the contrary. Such powers and duties shall be discharged by the vice president acting as president. Okay. Reagan's vice president was George H.W. Bush, who would have assumed the powers and duties of the presidency had the enclosed letter been signed. Immediately after the assassination attempt, while President Reagan was prepared for emergency surgery, his aides drafted this letter for the transfer of power. Immediately after his successful surgery, President Reagan reassured his aides that he could function as president while in the care of his doctors, so the letter was never signed. President pro tem. As per Section 3, the letter was addressed jointly to the Honorable Strom Thurmond, President pro tem, and the Honorable Thomas P. O'Neill, Jr., Speaker of the House. Article 1, Section 3 of the U.S. Constitution states that the Vice President of the United States shall be President of the Senate, and directs the Senate to elect a President pro tem to act in the Vice President's absence. By Senate custom, the President pro tem is the most senior senator from the majority party. Okay, Strom Thurmond, like I say, was there for 700 years. Was a South Carolina senator for over 48 years. Well, that was a long time. First as a Democrat from 1954 to 1964, then as a Republican through 2003. I believe also even prior to 1954, he was part of the Dixiecrat Party. to 2003. Thus, Strom Thurmond became the president pro tem and the second highest ranking officer in the Senate and the fourth in line to the U.S. presidency. Section 4. Section 4 is the only section of the 25th Amendment that has never been used. Section 4 allows other executive officials to declare the president unable to serve. The vice president and a majority of the president's cabinet or another group chosen by Congress can together decide to declare a president unable to serve. These officials then sign and deliver a letter to the president pro tem of the Senate and the Speaker of the House. So that would be 3 and 4 in the chain of command. After which the vice president would then become acting president. To take back the presidency, the president may send a letter to the president pro tem and Speaker of the House. However, the vice president and cabinet or other body chosen by Congress can challenge the president's return. Vice President Bush did not invoke the Section 4 of the 25th Amendment since he was on a plane at the time of the assassination attempt on President Reagan. By the time Vice President Bush had landed in Washington, Reagan had already woken from surgery. I did not realize it was that quick. This unused letter to transfer presidential power provides a fascinating insight into the continued relevance of the U.S. Constitution and its amendments. While many countries around the world experience violence and turmoil upon the transfer of power, the United States has a long history of peaceful and lawful succession, as well as a means of clarifying ambiguities in the law. This is the fourth and final document in the Transfer of Power series. To learn more about the issues of the section, blah, 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 blah. So that is going to do it for the Transfer of Power series, which means come January, a new series will be upon us. And this is interesting because it does beg the question. Like, yes, Reagan recovered quickly, but, history, unlike any other subject, which is why I know a lot of people don't really have a fondness for it. It's because it's so ambiguous. There's so many what-ifs. In math and science, you can pose what-ifs, but really they're not really applicable because, like in math, let's say, you can say, well, what if, 5 times 2 didn't equal 10? But we all know that 5 times 2 always equals 10. Whereas in history, there's tons of what-ifs. Like, yes, he didn't sign the letter, but what if? What if something had gone wrong in the surgery? There's always that possibility. Not saying anything nefarious. What happened if something out of the blue went wrong? Then this letter was never signed. Nowadays, it's in place that even if the letter wasn't signed, if something were to happen, we would know the chain of command, the vice president would bump up and so would everybody below that person. And it's just really fascinating because not only that, and especially then, that is a huge what if. Because technically, had something happened to Ronald Reagan as acting sitting president of the United States, if he were to have been incapacitated for an extended period of time, but never signed the letter, that's the curious part. It's the not signing the letter that truly is the curious part. I don't know. That's why I love it. Like I've told people, I say, I'm sorry for rambling, but I'll finish up in a second. I've told people that, that's why I loved history, because you can ask, you can ask 10 different scientists, let's say, about a certain thing. You may get a bunch of different explanations, but at the end of the day, you're always going to end up at the same place. You can take a historical event, 10 different people from around the world, ask them their opinion on it. You're going to get 10 different replies, and a lot of the time, no one is wrong. Like, you have what the outcome of the historical event, but then you have all the different interpretations of it. You can't really interpret the long-term ramifications of 5 times 2 equals 10 versus, a leader being assassinated and what the much bigger problems were after that. I don't know, fascinating. But what a great way, one, to start off the last week of 2024. Pardon me. Like I say, I'm nearly done with this. I really, 'tis the gift that keeps on giving this time of year. But that is going to do it for this Monday Talks. Thank you so much for joining me. Hopefully you have a great rest of the week, and more importantly, if you are traveling in the next day or so, a very, very safe, mind you, and Happy New Year. Tomorrow, no TTM Tuesday. I'm all over the place. I've got to catch up and figure that one out. However, Wednesday the 1st, 7 p.m., the Autograph Fisherman John Burgess' channel, we will be having the TTM stream, and I will be busting out a bunch. I got a bunch over the holiday break, over the holiday week, and including some ones that made me scratch my head as to how in the world they got here. But you will see that on Wednesday at 7 Eastern, by the way. So until then, I do have something coming out tomorrow because I've had some stuff sitting around that I do not want to have sitting around anymore just because it was sent to me by 3 very, very amazing people, and that will be coming tomorrow, a very special Tuesday mail day. But until that point, hopefully you have a great rest of your week. We will see you next time.